Hello, good day to everybody. I am Bernard Porte. I'm the founding winemaker of Clos du Val, and next to me is...
I'm Carmel Greenberg, and I'm the current winemaker of Clos du Val, started this last June.
So Clos du Val started back in 1972. The reason for the creation of Clos du Val is because I was employed by a gentleman whose name was John Gollet, whom I met in France in 1970, and he asked me to go around the world to try to find a place anywhere in the world except Europe, where I thought we could make great wines of very high quality. So I traveled around the world a couple of times for a couple of years, and then the place which I preferred of all of them, which I recommended to Mr. Gollet, was the area which is now known as the Stexit district of Napa Valley. He invested in November, December 1971, and he asked me to come back to California back in the spring '72 for a couple of weeks, and those couple of weeks have lasted 50 years. So Clos du Val, we have about 250 acres of vineyards, about 120, 130 in the Stexit district, and 100 to 120 in a place which is Yountville Appellation, which is just south of Yountville. We are basically concentrating on Bordeaux type varieties, and from the beginning we've been making Cabernet Sauvignon blend wines, and we still do. In the beginning, we were making a bit of Zinfandel, but we don't make any Zinfandel anymore. So the name of the game was to make wines mostly from grapes coming from our own vineyards. In 1989, the area of Stexit district was recognized as an appellation. So in some of the wines that we're going to taste, you will not see the appellation Stexit district, but some of the other wines you'll see it. Okay, so what we want to do, there are 3 or 4 things that are important for Clos du Val. One, and I didn't invent anything. I inherited that from being raised by my father, who was in the wine business, and the key element for him was expression of terroir, and that's the reason why we selected that area in the Stexit district, because I had realized in the afternoon of the summer, evenings of the summer, I realized that every time we went past a certain hill, it was getting cooler. And even in those days, I thought the wines of Napa Valley were a bit too alcoholic for my French-raised palate. So I thought if we can change the temperature during the day, at least if we can have cooler nights, I'll be able to get some freshness that would do very well with the Merlot. Okay, so that's where we are in the Stexit district, about 5 miles north of Napa, an area which is about 1,100 acres all total, and we have 120 of those 1,100 acres. So the other elements is that wine for us is made to go with food. It's made to complement the food. So we're looking for wines that are balance, elegance, complexity, and the long finish. And we like the freshness at the end of our wines because that's what's left once you've had your food. Okay, so those are the key elements of the philosophy of winemaking. And Carmel here is following up on these elements. In fact, Carmel can tell you a bit about the 2021 vintage that's just finished.
Yeah, let me first tell you a bit about myself. I'm Israeli originally. I moved here to California in 2006. I went to UC Davis and got my degree, and then spent the last 10 years working in the Napa Valley, with my majority of my experience at Dominus Estate. And joined here at Clos du Val in June, just before the 2021 harvest, had enough time to prepare. And was lucky enough to have a great first harvest here at Clos du Val. We had very good growing conditions, a nice warm summer with some heat towards the end. So the end of August and into Labor Day weekend, we had 2 weeks of heat, some days going over 105 degrees, which pushed the ripening season a bit forward. and made for the harvest to start slightly earlier than average. So we started picking around September 5th and finished about mid-October. And the fruit quality was very good this year. Quantities not as much. We had relatively low yields due to the drought. We had very low rainfalls during the wet season, which created not enough of water reserves in the ground. So when the vines grow, there was smaller clusters or smaller berries, but more concentrated with great soft tannins and a richness of flavors that really transform beautifully into the wines. And so there's a lot to look forward in the 2021 wines. Unfortunately, we'll have to wait at least another year, if not two, to taste them, but there's definitely something to look forward to.
Okay. With all that said, now you've got a good idea what Côte d'Ivoire is all about. We can start tasting some of those wines. And we've got the wines here of 97, 98, 99, and the other ones.
We have a 15, a 16, and an 18.
So we are going to taste those wines together, and we will post comments according to what we find or do not find. Okay? So 1997, it was an interesting year. It was a year that was kind of wet at the beginning, and then at one point we had some heat spells, but we had some rains, and it ended up being a fairly early harvest. But the way it ripened gave us a fair amount of structure, which we really like. So this wine is a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Cabernet Franc, like many of the wines that we make here at Côte d'Ivoire. We have never been focused on the intensity of the varietal character. I've always been more focused on the balance and the elegance and the complexity of the wine. So as some of my colleagues told me, but Bernard, you're reducing the intensity of the varietal character. Why that? I said, because I think the wine is better. But we're talking two different cultures. Some of my colleagues, the culture was the most intense varietal character was the best wine. And for me, the wine, the best balance, the roundest, the most complex wine was a better wine. So it's not that one is right, one is wrong. It's different approach, different culture of winemaking. Okay? So the 1997 is a, well, you cannot see too well, but it's, trust me, it's a beautiful ruby color, still very vibrant. We call ruby, yeah, very ruby. It's not very deep ruby. It's not, it doesn't have any blackish tones, but we can see that it's very, very red. There's no oxidation anywhere there. We can see along the legs, I call it, in French we call that the legs. I'm not so sure we're supposed to call legs that anymore, but anyway, that's what it is. Some other people call that tears. Okay, maybe it's better. Anyway, and so the nose is fairly intense, very pointed. Caramel would say it's got a French nose.
A bit French, a bit mushroom. What I would describe also as like a forest floor.
Yeah, it's got a bit of mossy name, of mossy tone, a bit of tobacco, but still very fresh, very, very well scented in the nose. To the palate, it is very well structured, still a bit young. The tannins are a bit dry, still kind of drying the wine, but the wine is very round inside the mouth, and very long finish, very long finish.
And it has a great acidity. The acidity is really keeping it fresh and live.
That's one of the characteristics of many of the wines of the Clos d'Ivoire, that have got that fresh acidity. Okay, so it's a wine that is ready to be enjoyed, can age a bit more if you care to, but it's a wine which as I'm talking, I still have the full flavors in the mouth. The wine hangs in there, and it's very impressive, in my view. Obviously, sure.
No, there's a really nice elegance to it. The tannins are still present, but they're really soften and they coat your mouth in a really lovely way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay, that's for 1998. 1997, excuse me. The next one, anything else you want to add, Carmen?
And the 97, no, but the 98, I already took a sniff and it smells amazing.
Okay, why don't you talk about it?
It already has a lot of red fruit, which is quite unique with such an old wine, because usually those fruit characters evolve into secondary characters that come from the aging on the barrel. But this managed to keep that freshness on the nose, which is really impressive.
Yeah, it doesn't have the mossy aroma that the other ones had. So, but the 1998 was a beautiful vintage altogether. And it was like everything. It was rain, hot spell and everything. But at the end, we had very good ripening conditions. So the color is a bit darker. So darker ruby than the 1997.
Yeah, it's a bit deeper.
Yeah, deeper, yeah. And there again, there's no sign of oxidation at all. Can't talk about the legs, but let's say the tears are beautiful.
Again, what's really apparent with this wine is the acidity. It's keeping the wine so fresh, even after how many years is that?
That's 33 years. 33
yeah.
years. So, no, 23 years. 23, 24, whatever, that doesn't matter.
23.
Yeah. So, and what I like is this wine. It's a bit drier than the other one. It's not as full as the previous one, but very elegant.
Very elegant. It has some fig notes and some tobacco, more tobacco.
Yeah. The nose and the mouth are a bit more elegant. It's a bit less heavy maybe than the previous one, but in the mouth, the tannins are not as aggressive as in 1997, but they are still there. They're holding the wine pretty good. Yeah, it's a wine that will go extreme. Oh man, is it fine! It is more elegant to the second taste than I had in the first taste.
It is. What's also beautiful about these wines that they develop in the glass so beautiful. So when you open them, they have these fresh characters, but even if you left the glass for a while, I'm sure they'll evolve and continue to be delicious.
Oh, the elegance of this wine is amazing. Okay, so 1999. Next vintage, 1999. Okay, in terms of color, maybe a bit darker than 1998. In the aroma, it's a bit more austere. It doesn't show as well as 97 or 98.
I think it's a bit more creamier.
Yeah, it doesn't come up as much. Maybe it's rounder, a bit heavier.
It's a bit heavier. I think it's still very expressive, but it has interesting less of that freshness. It's a bit more round and richer.
Yeah, it's creamy is the right term. So beautiful.
And some mushroom as well.
Yeah, well, mushroom comes and goes, and some of it comes sometimes from the oak of our barrels. In the taste, the wine is very well structured, very rich, very complex. It's got some of the fat that Carmel was talking about before, which makes it a bit rounder, but the structure is right behind and gets the wine to hang in there for a long, long time.
Interesting. It seems like the tannins are a bit more grainy on this one. Like,
yeah,
99. Age even was it a big tanning?
Yeah, 99 was a cooler vintage, and so we have that that green element of a cooler vintage.
Yeah, it's bigger on the palate as well. It's heavier than the other.
Maybe it's the most complex of all three. Maybe the most complex, and each one has got something I like. I'm biased.
I agree.
Okay, so new wines.
Well, Not exactly mine, because I wasn't here at Clos these years, but it's definitely in the Napa Valley, and I can tell you a bit about the vintage. So 2015 was one of the best vintages of the decade, and high tannic year. It was warm, and there were several heat waves towards the end of September, and yeah, very dry in growing season. And what we're going to taste here is our Three Graces, which is made from the top lots of the year and from our vineyards. And every year it could be a bit of a different blend. The best wines are chosen to make this blend in a small quantity. So for the 2015, it's 54% Cabernet and 45 Cab Franc and 1% of Petit Verdot. And this, which is a bit different style than the wines, Bernard, you made, have 100% new oak on them. So they will be a bit bigger, heavier, might have more of those sweet oak tannins. So maybe we can taste them and see.
One element we should mention is that before we were talking about the reserves of Clos du Val, but that term was not used after a while, and recently we've introduced a new brand label of Hirondelle. Hirondelle is the name of our vineyards, and the reason we have that name Hirondelle is because we have a winery with big eaves, and the swallows love to nest under the eaves. And swallow in English is hirondelle in French. So that's why we call that vineyard Hirondelle. Okay, so the next two wines will have the Hirondelle appellation. That means it comes 100% from our own vineyards on that particular district, Outstachton district. Okay?
Right. So Hirondelle is actually broken into two parts. One part of the vineyard is right around the winery where we're sitting now, and the other part is just a mile up north, and that's the majority of the Hirondelle vineyard. And so let's taste the 2015, the Three Graces.
So that's blacker.
Yeah, so you can see already the color, well, it's younger as well.
Yeah, so true.
So younger wines have, yeah, deeper colors, and the nose, you can get a lot of that sweet oak already, some vanilla, some fruit, cherry, plum.
Plenty of black fruit.
Yeah, a lot of black fruit, blackberry, like red black plum. It's very elegant. Even though it's a younger wine, the tannins are very refined and smooth. There's a long finish with that sweetness of the oak coming in and really lingering in your mouth. It's really beautiful. There's a good density to the wine as well, a good weight to it.
Yeah, and it's a bit creamier. Talking about cream,
it is creamier.
It's much creamier than the previous wines, but it was a warmer climate too, warmer weather.
Yes, definitely a hot vintage.
Yeah, so that shows in there. So the ripe blackberry that we have is part of that warmer climate, and the fat, the cream of the wine comes also from slightly riper fruit than we had in the previous three wines.
Right, and the oak is well integrated in this wine. It's giving it more volume, some depth to it.
Yeah.
Very nice. Okay, the 2016 was very good vintage as well. Didn't have any major heat events. It didn't have any major heat events. It was a relatively smooth growing season. And so really and the harvest was later that year because the fruit had more time to ripen, which really give for a nice fruit concentration and expression in the fruit. So a really nice fruity vintage.
So it's also from Hirondelle vineyard. And you can see that the color, man, that's dark.
Yeah.
That's dark, all right.
And you were talking before about blending, and this wine is 100% Cab. So if people are interested in a varietal wine, this is a representation of 100% Cab from our vineyards.
Yeah, the expression of the Saxon district is intense in that particular wine.
So on the nose, again, it has dark fruits, but very concentrated, even like soy and molasses.
Yeah, it's more on the riper side of things compared with the previous wines. Very intense. It's got a huge middle, which hangs in there tremendously, and which is very attractive, very attractive. It's a very high quality Cabernet Sauvignon in my view, and it's got the creamy part, velvety part of the Stag district.
Right, definitely. Again, the Stag Sip representation of big tannins, but approachable and soft. I mean,
Yeah.
you can definitely feel them in your palate. They're giving weight and structure to the wine, but they're not overwhelming.
Yeah, the tannins of the Stag district are not drying normally. They are there, but usually associated with the tannin. So they are not as intense as some other Cabernet Sauvignon made elsewhere in Napa Valley, but you've got the roundness that comes from the fresher climate of Stag district.
And this wine as well was aged in 100% new oak, so definitely has a lot of that oak support and structure, and giving it weight and lifting it. And then the last wine we're going to taste is a 2018 Cab, and 2018 again was a beautiful vintage, nice, warm throughout the summer. There was one rain event towards the beginning of September, but very, very light, to just kind of sprinkle the vines and freshen them from the heat. So no major heat events. Again, the longer the growing season is, the better it is for the quality of the grapes, giving them time to develop those fruity characters and without rushing up with the sugar accumulation. So another good vintage from the Napa Valley. And this wine is 80% Cabernet Sauvignon, at 12 Merlot, 7% Petit Verdot, and 1% Malbec, which we also grow here in Hirondelle Vineyard.
And so the wine is a bit softer than the previous one. It's less black fruit, it's more red fruit, but it has a structure which is a bit different, and that comes from the Petit Verdot. The Petit Verdot has two elements. It brings a bit of acidity to the wine, and also it brings a bit of sometimes rough structure. But in that case, the structure is not rough, but it helps in a complexion of the wine, and it gets the wine to hang in there in your mouth. So the Merlot is also bring roundness and freshness. But the Petit Verdot is very important here.
Yeah, I agree. Even though 7% Petit Verdot is relatively, that Petit Verdot is a big wine on itself. So added as a blender, it really boosts up a bit the structure and the tannins, and also color. Petit Verdot has amazing color.
Deep red. And the problem with the Petit Verdot that I have as a winemaker is that the nose is kind of blocked on the Petit Verdot. So we don't want to use too much in the Cabernet Sauvignon or in any blend, because it makes the wine a bit square, a bit more angular, but also it kind of blocks the nose. And we have a little bit of that in that wine. But the mouth is so good, so fresh, so lively, and the tannins are kind of rounded. The wine is so well centered. This is a beautiful wine that's going to age forever.
Yeah, I think it definitely shows the character of the different components, because it's big, but it's soft, and there's more complexity to it. Like, you want to go back and taste and find maybe something new every time you go back to the glass. Very fresh too. Fresh, bright, red character.
Very velvety, very velvety. Yeah. So that's a very good expression of the wines coming from our vineyards, and we're pretty proud of that. In fact, we're pretty proud of all the wines that we presented today.
Yes, wines are
and
lovely.
We hope you enjoy them, and we thank you for your interest for the wines of Clos du Val.
Thank you, Bernard.
Thank you, Carmel.
Enjoy the wine.
Enjoy. Thank you, Carmel.